I don't like bullies. I mean, I obviously wasn't one. I know too many cool history facts to have fallen into that trap. I was much more liable to end up on the other side of it. But be perfectly honest, I think that bullying and kind of bossing people around just isn't nice. I think there's generally other ways to do stuff. This is kind of why I always dislike Florentino Perez at Real Madrid, i.e., is very good at what he does. If I was a Real Madrid fan, I'd probably like him a lot more. But he uses some underhanded tactics, right? Kylian Mbappe. So, he's always finagling. He's always in the shadows. He's like Deep Throat in that movie, standing in the darkness in the parking garage, like, "Hello, Kylian." He's that guy. And we're here to talk about another case of bullying in the footballing world, not Florentino Perez. I'm leaving Javier Tebas in La Liga alone for a day, right? We're not talking about the Premier League. No, we're talking about a particularly severe, obvious, brutal, and cutthroat version of the bullying happening in the United States. This is MLS. And MLS has been on a bit of a tear recently. They pulled the clubs out of the U.S. Open Cup, which is the FA Cup of the United States, been contested for over 100 years, and they just pulled their clubs out of it because they thought the schedule was too congested. Like, just a weird take that I didn't like, and I made a video about. Well, they're at it again. And this one is so transparent and so mean that it just really, it boils my blood a little bit. But it's hard to discern exactly who started the conversation. But you need some lore. You need some background. You need some fan fiction, right, to catch you up. So first, there's a club in Indianapolis called Indy 11. That's where we're operating. This is the United States. That's Indiana, that dot right there. That's Indianapolis. So we're middle America. It's a sizable city, not a huge one. And it's got a club in the USL, which is the second division of the United States. So there's MLS and then USL, and then USL has kind of multiple divisions down, right? But Indy 11's involved in that, right? It's got a decent fan base. It is a generally healthy club, and a club that has been created one day with the idea of it becoming an MLS franchise, right? The idea that someday it will enter into MLS. Well, that requires a couple of various things. Because obviously in the United States, there is no promotion and relegation. In the United States, the only way to get into MLS is to basically you get a ticket, right? You get Willy Wonka's golden ticket to enter into MLS and leave USL, right? The U.S. Soccer Federation assigns first division status to MLS and second division status to USL and so on and so forth. And those are the people that decide that MLS is above USL, and MLS is more talented than USL. I'd say MLS. We had this debate on stream, so I don't want to wade into it too much because I know people are going to have a large variety of takes here. But roughly speaking, MLS, as evidenced by players that have left MLS and then had an impact in this league, is at least comparable to the lower half of the English Championship, while USL is probably comparable to like League Two, right? That's the level that we're talking about, and that's where Indy 11 fits in. And the United States, despite its early history in football, is now not necessarily known for financial hardship when it comes to clubs. Indy 11's in a solid spot. And in fact, Indy 11 is making some serious progress. Indy 11 had actually been working with a developer and the city of Indianapolis to put a 20,000 seat stadium in downtown. Right now, they're not playing in particularly awesome digs, but they would be, right? Indy 11's got a decade of a track record in USL. They've proven fan support. And so the city was working on a project to put a stadium downtown as part of a revitalization project that was running up to a tune of $1 billion. This was a very big deal, and Indy 11's park was going to be a really significant part of that. But this is a USL club. This isn't an MLS club. So you smell that? It's Donald Garber, and he's about to arrive. You see, Don Garber is the guy at the head of MLS. And I don't know whether I'm supposed to blame him directly on this for the bullying or whether it was invited by the mayor, Joe Hogsett of Indianapolis. But here is what we know. Today, a bunch of shit hit the fan because Joe Hogsett held a press conference where he announced that Indianapolis would be pursuing the acquisition of an MLS team. They would be pursuing the founding of a club in MLS in Indianapolis, that Joe Hogsett, the mayor of Indianapolis, would be submitting the paperwork in order to try and make that happen. Joe Hogsett also said that earlier that day or the day before, he had gotten on a plane and flown to New York City to meet with Don Garber to discuss the possibility of an MLS team in New York. So let me lay out the two possibilities for how this happened, because I think you can probably tell where this is going. And I'll just give you a hint. This is the headline. Developer claims city is backing out of Indy 11. Stadium deal Hogsett denies allegations. Okay, the two versions of the way this could have gone down. One, Mayor Joe Hogsett gets real itchy in the britches, right? This man's getting restless. He's thinking about the idea of putting a stadium downtown for USL club, but he happens to be a giant MLS fanboy. So he decides he's going to fly to New York City to try and beg Don Garber from an MLS team so he doesn't have to put up with this awful, stinky USL team. Or the alternate, right? The one that, in my opinion, if you couldn't tell based off my particularly snarky interpretation of option one, this is the likely favorite. Don Garber, or the assembled bigwigs at MLS, here in the breeze that a club is going to be getting a large downtown stadium in a major U.S. city for a league that's not MLS. MLS, as I often say and will continue to say, is convinced that every time somebody kicks a soccer ball in the United States, they should get paid for it, right? That they are the only arbiter of soccer or football in the United States. And I would point to literally every other league system in the world to prove that if you actually want, if you give a rat's ass about the game and you care about the development of the game, that's not the way you should approach it. Nobody else has ever approached it that way. Not that that's ever a valid reason, but, you know, if you're going to try and build every single thing inside of one closed league system, in my opinion, you are robbing people of the single most beautiful thing about football or soccer, and that everybody can play it and everybody can aspire to some sort of greatness in the FA Cup, through promotion and relegation, through literally anything. Even now, there is still that faint hope for a club like Indy 11 that if they can get the right stadium situation, that they can be a candidate that MLS will come in and say should be part of MLS, or that Indianapolis throws in a bunch of support and then all of a sudden Indy 11 ends up being in MLS. But the way MLS is doing it is they're basically trying to destroy teams that are not MLS. They are trying to destroy. MLS is building up this excellent league that is financially viable and developing players while simultaneously destroying every other footballing or soccer institution in the United States. They've gone after the U.S. Open Cup, and they're going after any USL team that dares cross them. And that includes Indy 11 here. So the likely scenario that I don't think I ever explained is Don Garber realizes USL is about to get a stadium and it's downtown. Now he gets Joe Hogsett, the mayor of Indianapolis, who I have never been, I never even thought about until today. And he flies Joe Hogsett over to, into New York, or convinces Joe Hogsett to throw in some taxpayer money from the mayor's office and fly to New York, right? And he sells him a breadcrumb trail of the fact that there might be an MLS team in downtown Indianapolis. All he has to do is not build the USL stadium. Because if he builds the USL stadium, Don Garber won't do it. It's a tease. It's a ruse. There's no guarantee here, right? This is the fact that Joe Hogsett's announcing he is beginning the process of applying for an MLS team and whatever. I don't even know. That's not necessarily how I thought it worked, right? You have to have somebody that wants to actually own the club or whatever. And if they were going to involve Indy 11 in this process, do you think he would have mentioned it in his 5.5-minute press conference that I had the pain of watching? Right? This guy looks like a sentient mannequin. Okay. And he's over here talking about how he's going to submit an application. Brother, it takes $500 million to get an MLS franchise. I don't know if you got $500 million sitting around in the coffers of the mayor of Indianapolis. And if you do you really want to spend all of that on getting an MLS franchise? You need an owner. You need an infrastructure. You need something. You need literally anything. But what it looks like in this scenario, this second scenario, is that Don Garber has sniffed out that a USL club's about to get a nice, cushy 20,000 seat stadium as part of a downtown revitalization project, and he's found a way to kill it. He has waved the golden ticket in front of the face of the mayor of Indianapolis, and he has gone jumping after it like a 5-year-old thinking he's about to go to Willy Wonka's chocolate factory, when in all likelihood, it's going to be very difficult for them to get an MLS team, because it's very difficult to get an MLS team. I know, because a bunch of cities have been trying for a long time, and they haven't gotten them, including my hometown of Tampa. And you know what really, really angers me, what boils my clams, right, what grinds my gears, is this is totally going to work. Right, because the city is now going to pull out of this downtown revitalization project, just as this article states. The Keystone Group, the company working to develop 11 Park, claimed Thursday the city was backing out of a good faith deal Joe Hogsett denied those allegations. Since June of 2022, Keystone's been working to develop a $1 billion 18-acre complex in the western border of downtown Indianapolis. It would be centered around a 20,000-seat multi-purpose stadium to serve as the home field for Indy 11. Right? Like, this is an amazing project. And in my opinion, if you're MLS, it's going to work. It's going to work. You have to take a pessimistic view of this sort of thing sometimes. It's totally going to work. And it's not like not everybody sees through it. I mean, this guy tweeting a summary: Indianapolis has an 11-year-old soccer team, secures site and funding for 20,000-seat stadium. Commissioner Don Garber meets with Indy's mayor and convinces him to back out of the deal in return for a shot at MLS. Mayor announces MLS pursuit without acknowledging current team. He doesn't mention Indy 11 once in that press conference. No guarantees they'll get an MLS team. Active harm done to current team. MLS is bad for soccer. I'm not going to go that far. I'm going to be entirely honest with you, because MLS has done a lot in the good direction, but it is also doing a lot of bad. MLS is suffocating and destroying any other soccer infrastructure and creating a monopoly in the United States. This would be like the Premier League actively destroying the English Football League. That is literally what's happening here, right? Obviously on a smaller scale, because it's not as big of a deal in the United States. It's the fourth biggest sport in the United States instead of the first, right? But that's what's happening. MLS is a separate entity, and it is suffocating every other potential football club or football league in the United States. And there's really nothing USL can do about it, right? Because MLS is the golden goose. Right, USL is something that's battling for relevancy and existence, and it's got a lot of good, healthy clubs in it, but it's also something that when you're dealing with a mayor of Indianapolis who's probably never kicked a soccer ball in his life, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, I'm just saying he doesn't really know what's going on. He knows that USL is the equivalent of a minor league baseball team, and MLS is the equivalent of a major league team, right? MLS is the big deal. It's the real deal. And you don't view Indy 11 as the same sort of thing, because there isn't that understanding that a not first division club can still have major importance, because that doesn't exist anywhere in U.S. sports. So it's very easy for somebody like Don Garber to manipulate these people that don't really understand soccer or the soccer landscape or anything by convincing them that they could get a major league team instead of a minor league team, when in fact Indy 11's a perfectly fine club, right? That's been around for 11 years and that does actually have aspirations of becoming an MLS team. That's the part I don't understand. If you go through with this complex, you've got a soccer-specific stadium for Indy 11, and you can try and push Indy 11 into being an MLS team. The only reason not to do that would be, Don Garber basically trying to push this in a different direction so that MLS could have complete control over it. And that bothers me, right? Because bullying bothers me. But I'm also aware of the fact that it works. It makes good business sense for MLS to suffocate every other part of soccer in the United States. It does, because they have the ability to do that, because they can wave the money around in front of people like Joe Hogsett. Now, they have said that there is an unidentified experienced sports executive forming they're putting together a group to try and pay the club's franchise fee, which against $500 million. So that's not insignificant. The whole thing just makes me feel dirty. It's very obvious that they're doing this just to kind of quash the fact that Indy 11 was about to get a really nice downtown stadium, but they're not MLS, so that just can't happen. Maybe they, for some reason, they have to roll this out slow, but promises were made that Indianapolis would get an MLS team. But this is, it's underhanded, old school, cutthroat business, and the losers are all of the fans, players, and people that have been invested in Indy 11 for a decade. And they're, having kind of an in memoriam on their blogs and on Twitter, and all of the different news outlets around Indianapolis that are talking about it are all kind of pouring one out for Indy 11, because the amount of uncertainty that's been created from we have a great downtown stadium in the works to now we don't is really dramatic. And I hope that they're able to land on their feet, or I hope that if Indy 11 is the team that they can take into MLS. It just makes sense but the only reason you wouldn't want to do that is because MLS would be able to maintain control. And that's just, you're already fighting the battle to make soccer more popular in the United States and to develop soccer in the United States. Why have a giant civil war? Right, while trying to lift everything up? Why just declare? It's not like you can put an MLS club in literally every single city in America, right? Let Indianapolis have a really healthy USL club, and then make MLS so great that they buy all the best players from that one, or just promote. I don't know. I'm trying to come up with a way for it to not make economic sense for MLS to do this, but the problem is it makes economic sense. It doesn't make soccer sense. It's terrible.